You guys, everything has kicked off. Before we start, I purchased these products with my hard-earned monies. I have had no correspondence with Morphe, and I am not a Morphe affiliate, so I have no code to offer you. Not that there's anything wrong with being a Morphe affiliate, but in case you care, now you know, and we can progress. So I'm here to give you my candid thoughts on these products. I like to think that I'm pretty fair with my reviews. We are not going to delve into the drama because I don't really know how. Drama is just not my forte, and there are people on the internet that can do it much better than me. But I can talk about makeup until your ear falls off. So that's what we're going to do today. Well, I hope that your ears remain intact, but we will be discussing the makeup, the brushes, the pros, the cons, how they compare to other brands on the market, and where Morphe kind of situates itself in the market, and if indeed this brand is worth the hype. I did a lot of research, and I went on to purchase 2 of the more popular 35 eyeshadow palettes and also 9 of the brushes that received good reviews on YouTube. And all that came out to $112 USD, and that does include a 10% off code. I used the code LozCurtis because Lauren is an absolute sweetheart and I'm so happy to support her. Shipping to Australia was $24 USD. That is essentially a Morphe eyeshadow palette. That's exactly another Morphe eyeshadow palette. It's a little steep, so it's only really worthwhile if you're making a pretty large order. Let's start with the eyeshadow palettes and then we'll move on to the brushes a little bit later. So I selected 2 palettes, the 35O and the 35R, because they seem to be the ones that were creating a lot of hype online. This was before the whole Jaclyn Hill thing. I didn't get that. I would like to buy it and support her, but I think I'll be waiting quite a while or refreshing furiously, one or the other. For demonstration's sake, here is the 35O, and let's talk about some pros, right? Great price, $24 USD for 35 eyeshadows. You know, we can't deny that's a good price point. You get a decent amount of product, you get a decent array of shades, as long as you like warm eyeshadows. And that goes for the vast majority of the Morphe palettes that I saw online. They tend to lean very warm. So in terms of finish, I think that there is a good balance of mattes and shimmers. There is also 1 or 2 satins and one lonely duochrome here. So the color payoff, or the pigmentation, was pretty good throughout the entire board. There was no shades that I came across that I was like, oh my God, that's really bad. There's a caveat there. They require a specific kind of canvas to work on, but we'll talk about that in the cons. In terms of blendability, this is where I expected things to go curvy. But in this case, I found that the shades blended pretty well, particularly the mid-tone mattes. They really seamlessly meshed into one another. The dark shades, the quite deep matte shades, I did find required a little bit of extra attention. Otherwise, they could get a little bit splotchy and patchy. Now let's talk about longevity. And this is where we start to kind of veer into the cons territory. So the first time I used it, I was really, can I put this down? Oh my God, my arm. The first time I used the Morphe eyeshadow formula, I did what I would normally do, and I primed my eye how I would normally prime it. So I put a little bit of Tarte Shape Tape all over the lid and up to the brow and set it with a little bit of powder and went about my blending business. I experienced a lot of fading that day, and that is quite rare for me. I have dry skin, my face is a magnet for makeup. Longevity issues, not typically something that I encounter. So I went on to kind of experiment with the shadows a little bit more, and I discovered that if you use more of a grippy base, like a MAC Paint Pot or a MAC 24-hour Extend Eye Base kind of product, they last a lot longer. It's like the formula is super silky and it just kind of blows away in the wind, and it needs a tacky surface to really hold it down, I guess. Something for my hooded eye people or heavy eyelid people to note, if you pop a foil on the lid, it will transfer to the crease throughout the day. That's kind of the nature of foiled eyeshadows though, and it's not inherently an issue with Morphe. While we're on the topic of the foils, I think some people might perceive this as a con. The foils are lackluster when applied with a dry brush. They really do perform their beaming best when you apply them either with a finger or a damp brush. I'm not mad about it. You know, with foiled shadows or any formula, you just pick the best application tool and method to get the product's best performance. So I said that I was having some minor issues with those dark mattes, right? Let me explain. I created this smoky eye today with the 35R palette. And I primed my eye with that tacky base, and I went in with one of these mid-tone mattes to do a bit of transition. That mattified the base. It was no longer tacky. So when I really tried to build the depth with these darker shades, they just weren't adhering in the way that I wanted them to, and they weren't building the depth that I was seeking. I tried to make this quite a deep, velvety, smoky eye, and I feel like it fell short. You know, I've kind of got a soft smoky eye. That was not what I was intending. An obvious con that I almost forgot because it's so obvious, this packaging is so flimsy. It doesn't have, I'm not confident about this click. One thing that I noticed when I opened both of these palettes, there are so many shades here that are so gosh darn similar that this palette could be half the size and you could create the exact same look. This shade, like this shade and this shade and this shade, legit, I'm looking closely and I cannot see a difference. Even this one and this one are so similar, dude. Like we're talking like minuscule differences here. But to me, like I just see a bit of a missed opportunity here to maybe take out a few of those duplicates and throw in some cooler tones or a variety of some description. Yeah, the palettes, they look quite homogeneous to me, but maybe that's what the masses want. I don't know. I don't have access to that kind of data. I feel like I covered everything there. Fallout, there is a moderate amount of fallout. Nothing that I would consider to be unusual, but I would say do your eyes first and then do your base, especially if you're going smoky. That's just good. That's just good practice anyway. So shall we do some finger swatches against other brands? Now I am aware that finger swatches do not tell the entire story, but it's definitely something that I did in my research, so I figure why not share my findings. In all the swatches, the skin was primed with a tiny bit of the NARS Pro Prime eyeshadow base, so this is a constant throughout. And I swatched a bunch of foils first. Every single brand here performed well. If I had to get really nitpicky, the Natasha Denona was the softest to touch, and the pigment seemed to drag on for the longest. But in general, the Morphe foils performed closely to that of other brands and other price points. Then I compared some mid-tone mattes. I enjoy the Morphe mid-tone mattes and they definitely held their own against other brands. Again, Natasha Denona definitely had the most opacity on one swipe. Strangely, the Kat Von D mattes swatch poorly. They perform much better on the eyes, which again goes to show that finger swatches aren't everything. But overall, Morphe performed well here. Finally, I compared some dark mattes, and here I think you can see that Morphe was the weakest link, which does correlate to how the dark mattes performed on my eyes. So the Morphe looks a little bit patchy. You can see that the pigment doesn't drag on quite as long as the other brands. So I would say that the Natasha Denona swatched best, followed by Anastasia Beverly Hills. I love her dark mattes actually. She has a great dark matte formula. Followed by Kat Von D, which apparently doesn't swatch very well at all. And then the Morphe came in last here. This might not necessarily be a deal breaker. You know, dark mattes are hard to formulate, but I thought I would just show you the information and you can make of it what you will. Shall we get a final verdict on the eyeshadow palettes? I was expecting these to be crap, I'll be honest, and I am pleasantly surprised. I like them a lot more than I expected to. I think if you are new to makeup, if price point is a strong concern for you, or perhaps you are a new makeup artist really looking to beef out your kit at a reasonable price point, I think you'll be quite pleased with these. That being said, if you are like me and you own countless Makeup Geek, Tarte, Too Faced, Kat Von D, Lorac, Tarte eyeshadows, do you really need another monster warm palette? Okay, shall we move on to the brushes? So I watched a lot of, again, reviews on YouTube, and I bought 9 brushes for science and for YouTube. Disclaimer, I am really fussy about brushes. So instead of just being like, not soft enough for me, I'm gonna try to compare them to other brands in your collection so that you can kind of feel it through the screen almost. Pretty much all of them shed a little bit at the beginning. Nothing crazy, nothing like I've seen on the reports online. I've washed them both with soap and water and with an alcohol-based cleaner, and none of them have deteriorated rapidly yet. Let's start with a brush that I actively disliked. This is the M501. It's almost like an oversized crease brush, and I've seen this most used for highlight application, and it does deposit highlight. This feels so wiry and scratchy. So I kind of applied my highlight with the tip, but then when I went to kind of blend it out on the side, it started to splay visibly. I feel like I'm rubbing a tree branch across my face right now. This one, not a pleasure to use for me at all, and I'm concerned that it's actually lifting my foundation. If you like that shape and you're not at all concerned about softness, then you might like it. I do not. And let's move on to some brushes that I'm kind of meh about. And this constitutes most of the brushes that I purchased. I don't really hate them, but they probably wouldn't get a whole lot of use around here. The M441. This is a MAC 224 kind of situation. It's a large crease brush, which you can use to perhaps apply your transition shade or maybe blend between steps. It's a good shape, it's a standard shape. In terms of softness, I would say that it's not wiry. It's softer than the MAC 217. I don't know what happened with MAC 217s. I'm sorry, that is just barbed wire right there. And it's softer than the MAC, but probably not quite as soft as my Zoeva crease brushes. So that's where it kind of situates in the market. Again, if you're not super fussed about super soft brushes, then I think you would quite enjoy it. This was the nicer crease brush, in my opinion, the M433. This is essentially a MAC 217 kind of situation. So it's a smaller crease brush with a pinched ferrule, good for either depositing or blending eyeshadows into the crease, or you can even kind of buff it across the lid if you want a softer application. You guys know how a 217 works. This one it is quite soft. I would say that this is quite comparable to the Zoeva crease brush that I've got here in terms of softness. I'm not sure I could tell them apart in a blind test. So if you're a fan of Zoeva, then you'd probably be a fan of that as well. So another meh one, the M438. This is a funny one. I typically like candlestick shaped brushes, and this one is decently soft. Definitely not wiry at all, but it's so dense. I feel like it's too dense for highlight because you would get a crazy stripe. It's too dense for contour because, again, you would get a crazy stripe. I feel like the only thing that it would be really ideal for is if you really liked packing on a powder under the eyes and you wanted something dense to get a lot of payoff. But personally for me, I don't really like to wear that much powder under my eyes. So this is a miss for me, not because of the fiber or the way it's made, but because it just doesn't fit my purpose. More meh coming for you. This is the E36. This is a funny one, actually. I don't own anything like this in my collection. It's a pencil brush, but instead of coming to a point, it's rounded and a little bit blunter. And I tried to use this to really smoke out the lower lash line. It was a little bit small for that purpose. I think I tend to prefer a more pencil shape brush, a typical pencil shape brush. But what I will say is that this didn't irritate my lower lash line. And everything irritates my lower lash line. It's very delicate. So it's definitely a soft brush, and it's part of the E collection. So now let's talk about the Elite collection. They're all synthetics, and they're really nice synthetics. I would say that they are quite similar to Zoeva synthetics, not quite as soft as It Cosmetics synthetics. These are like, honestly, you guys, it's like velvet. These are the gold standard of synthetic brushes, It Cosmetics, but they are more expensive. Final brush before we move on to the brushes that I really enjoyed. This is the Morphe E3. This is a large pointed face brush, and I imagine that people would use this for bronzer or perhaps like blush if you like a more diffuse application. To me, this is a little bit too dense. Right, and that's not to my preference. So again, even though the construction of the brush is nice and the fibers are nice, it's not really fit for my purpose. I like my face brushes to be on the low density side so that it doesn't lift my foundation, because my foundation, it just wants to lift. It's the strangest thing, so I probably couldn't use this for bronzer, but you might be able to. It's a nice synthetic. Let's move on to some brushes that I actually like and I think that will be in, somewhat frequent rotation in my collection. So again, Elite Collection synthetics. The Morphe E4. This is an angled kind of blush brush, I think, situation. I would typically use this kind of brush for cream products. So cream bronzer, cream blush, maybe to blend foundation around the edges. This is so similar to the Zoeva 128 Cream Cheek, the synthetic version. Again, I couldn't tell these apart in a blind test if I closed my eyes. Not too dense, it's got that nice soft synthetic fiber. I see myself using this. Yay, we have a winner. The E22, this is a medium-sized crease brush of a synthetic fiber again, and I really like this for buffing out the edges of cream eyeshadows. I prefer my synthetics with creams as opposed to powders. This again, I have probably like 50 crease brushes that are exactly like this from all different brands, from EcoTools, from eCosmetics, Zoeva, what have you, and they're all nice. It's not special, but it will definitely be used because I like this kind of brush. And the final one, this is a little bit of a wild card one. It's the Morphe, obviously, Karima Morphe. The E35. So this is a very small precision brush that is stiff and has a rounded edge. Again, it's quite similar to a few of the brushes that I own, and I enjoy this kind of brush for gel eyeliner. So I'll take a little bit of gel eyeliner and push it into the bed of the lashes. It's also really good for coming in under the lashes and tight lining with a gel liner. Final verdict on the brushes. As I said, very hit and miss. In particular, I would say the natural fibers for me mostly were a pass and not quite as soft as I would like. But I did quite enjoy the Elite line. These are nice synthetics. So that begs the final golden question. Morphe, worth the hype? I'm a very diplomatic person, so these are very difficult ultimatum kind of questions for me. But I will say, I think that they are. And hear me out on this. Now, I'm not suggesting that everyone needs to go out right now and buy a Morphe eyeshadow palette, but this is a good product at a good price point. And if you want to spend $24 on an eyeshadow palette, then I think that this is the best option on the market. I think the brushes, I want to say that they're perhaps less worthy of the hype, just because brushes is such a saturated market, an even more saturated market than makeup itself, I would say. With the brushes, I'm just not sure that Morphe is offering something well above and beyond what is already on the market. Just because I don't like a product and someone else does not mean that they are lying. All it means is that humans have different preferences. Makeup is diverse. We like different things. Imagine if everyone liked the same thing. There would only be one eyeshadow palette on the market, right? I think the best thing we can do is research and be well-informed consumers. And hopefully that's what I've given you a little bit of today. I hope you found this video interesting, and if you did, then don't forget to hit subscribe and click the little notification bell so that you don't miss any of my future uploads, and come say hello to me on Instagram because I would love to chat to you there. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll speak to you all very soon. Bye!